Hey everybody, I'm the real Josh T, and I'm back. Welcome back to JNJtabletop. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite classes in the game. They are the most reliable damage dealers out there, and frankly, they're just a lot of fun. So today, join us as we give you our top 3 subclasses for the fighter in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
And in case you're not sure, I'm Jake, and I'm still here. But like Josh said, we're talking about the fighter. I feel extremely comfortable saying that they are the best and most reliable damage dealers in all of 5th edition. They get more feats and ability score increases than anyone. Typically, unless you're an archer, they are front-line beasts. And when you're talking about dealing the most damage, and especially doing that reliably, I think you probably could say they're a top 5 most powerful class in the entire game. And I don't think that would be a stretch to say. If you disagree with that, you can let us know in the comments section and give us your top 5. I think that would be fun. But Josh, let's talk about the outline. We discuss these videos in our Discord server, so if you would like to be part of that discussion, please feel free to hop in and check out our link tree. There's an invite link there. But we're going to present the 3 candidates that we've chosen in alphabetical order because we want you to have to watch the whole video and not skip to the end to see what we're going to do, because we know you can't do that. And then towards the end, we're going to reveal why we put them in the order that we put them in and discuss any honorable mentions or special awards that we want to give out. Usually which one we think delivers on the fantasy the best.
The criteria that we look at when we're rating these classes, it's going to be raw power, which is typically, it has an emphasis on combat ability. It's kind of hard to quantify some of the other things. We're also going to talk about how this subclass enhances what the base class does. What's special about these abilities that make what you're already good at better? And then, of course, does it deliver on the fantasy? Does it actually provide the experience that it's marketing to you?
A couple of things that we're going to try to avoid is, number 1, overlap. If we find that we think certain classes or multiple classes basically do the same thing, but one does it better, we're going to pick the one we think is the best and just disregard the others in terms of this. We're also not going to be ranking or considering role-playing in this discussion because you can make anything work as long as you are enjoying the character that you are playing. The other thing that we're going to avoid is multi-classing because that would defeat the purpose of comparing the fighter to the fighter or different fighters to different fighters. We might use some of these things potentially as tiebreakers, but really we just don't do that. So Josh, let's talk about, alphabetically speaking, nominee number 1. You can't have this conversation without discussing the Battlemaster fighter, can you?
No, you can't. You'd be crazy to. The Battlemaster fighter, it's the quintessential fighter. Yes, it is vanilla 5e. It's right there in the original player's handbook. And somehow it's still so wonderful, even after you have the, what do they call it? Is it the power gap? Is that what they call it? That's not the right word.
Like
power creep, thank you.
Yeah.
Even with the power creep, Battlemaster still holds its own. I mean, the raw power of this class is just great. Your main thing that you get going to be these maneuvers. And with the maneuvers, you have the opportunity to trip people, and now they're prone and you have advantage on them. You can do a pushing attack and then, maybe you get lucky, you knock them off a cliff or something like that, or just, get them out of the way. Or, you could do a lot of people call it cheesy, but like if you have one of those polearm master builds, you push them out of your reach, now they got to walk right back into it. You have menacing attack, which could apply the frightened condition. And one of the biggest things, I feel like Jake always talks about it a lot with this, is great weapon master or sharpshooter. One of your maneuvers is precision attack. And with that, you basically get to add a die, whatever your superiority die is, you add that to your attack roll. And you could do that after you make your attack roll. So I could roll and get like a 9, and I know that I need a 13 or something like that. Be like, all right, well, let me use this precision attack. It's almost like, I don't know. I mean, when it takes the risk out of Great Weapon Master and the Sharpshooter.
It's huge.
It really just lets you optimize your damage output.
You played a Battlemaster in our Dragon of Icespire Peak playthrough. I mean, Marcus was spoiled because not only did he have precision attack, but he also had Landor, the Death Destroyer bard inspiring him. So you had both of these things, but like, did you ever fear, I mean, like really fear using Great Weapon Master when you knew like if I have a bad roll, I could still do that? I'm not going to say it's
Yeah.
unlimited, but like between both of those, like sometimes you're going to be like, I'm trying even when I might not. And oh, well, I rolled well. So I still get it. All of those things, how do you quantify that? You can't necessarily.
It is kind of hard to quantify the raw power of it, but like to answer your question, no, not really. I mean, if I had a precision attack in my back pocket, or especially that plus an inspiration, it's like, yeah, I think I'll do it. I think it'll be all right.
As the dungeon master of that campaign, I can say that I actually, and there's other reasons, but I actually had to tune things up because Marcus was present. And that says about as much as I think you might need to know about the raw power of a battle master fighter. But in terms of like enhancing what the base class does, I mean, fighters, I mean, if you go back to the roots, it was the fighting man. This was the firstborn. This was the foundation of Dungeons and Dragons. And like when you look at that, I always look at the front line of a party. And obviously you're looking at your barbarians and your paladins. And I even consider rangers as very capable of filling that role. I mean, fighters are even like the backbone. Like they were there first doing the job. And when you add all of these maneuvers, the ability to start to control the front line on top of tanking, not taking damage at all because you have a high armor class and dealing damage more reliably than anyone else. I guess the only thing you don't do is heal, but there's even a rally maneuver that you could do if you wanted to have an ability to do something like that. So yeah, this is a fighter. Like how much more of fulfilling or I was going to say fulfilling the fantasy, which leads us right into the next point, but enhancing what a fighter does than just adding tactics to it.
Yeah, and I think that everything you just said, like the reason why you said it fulfills the fantasy is because everything you just said describes the fantasy of a fighter. Everything that we've been talking about is this is that fighter who studies war. They know how to fight. Their maneuvers are a reflection of that. This is their life. There's characters in movies and TV shows where they're like, when I'm on the battlefield, it just makes sense. Like I don't know how to do real life, but like I know how to fight. And that's pretty much where you're at with the battle master. I mean, you could study your enemies and figure out the best ways to hurt them, and you just have such a massive toolkit of amazing options to enhance your base class. I mean, like I said, this might be vanilla 5e, but this is the fighter of legend.
I've never played a battle master fighter, but oh, do I want to? And mostly because I've got to see Marcus do what he did.
It's the muscle wizard.
It's the muscle wizard, indeed. Indeed. So speaking of wizardly, sort of, not really, but kind of something special and supernatural in a way, let's go to nominee number 2 and talk about the Echo Knight. So Josh, this comes from the Wild Mount. This is a Matt Mercer creation, but you're actually able to manifest echoes of yourself. So it's like, what's the phrasing from Star Wars? Now there are 2 of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
and eventually now there are 3 of them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, this is raw power. I mean, if one is good, 2's probably better.
Being able to create a duplicate of yourself, and it's not like there are actually 2 of you, but you're able to attack from 2 different positions. You can teleport between those 2 positions. Yes. There is no limit to how many times you can do this. So your Echo has an AC of 18 and 1 hit point. So if it gets killed, it's a bonus action. Just pop it right back up, and you're able to do that as many times as you want. This just gives you so much battlefield control. Some of the hard parts of having a melee character is like, I'm stuck in this spot. I could only fight what I could reach. Well, you could still be that strength boy.
Yes.
And now your reach has massively extended, and that's not even talking about if you're using pole arms or if you're playing a bugbear. Bugbear has an additional 5 feet of reach. So yeah, I mean, you have so much mobility options, extra attacks, and tanking abilities as well. They could block some attacks against other party members or yourself. So it's just such a huge and strong ability. A lot of people have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it, but I think it's lovely. And dare I say it, this is my favorite of Matthew Mercer's contributions to the game of Dungeons and Dragons.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's fantastic. And I love the way you mentioned being in two places at once, and how being a melee character, which fighters typically are known for being, obviously not always, but like sometimes it's like, well, our front line is fighting their front line. It's like, okay, well, I might just manifest my echo on the other side, and then next turn just whoop. I'm still kind of here too, but now I'm also, or just send the echo after their backline. There's just options. And Josh, you said it really well. If you're not in just one spot, you're in two, and then eventually three places at once. You, as one, are a front line all of your own. You're just better at it, especially if you have that polearm master. I mean, you could start to cover 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 feet of line just on your own. It's just beautiful. It's a very strong class that way. Delivering on the fantasy. My goodness. I don't know this reference. You have to help me.
I said in our show notes, if your idea of an Echo Knight fighter is like you're Naruto out there and you're using your shadow clone jutsu, just to wreak havoc on the battlefield, look no further. No, they're not super strong as far as like how much damage can they take.
Still needs to be a target of an enemy action.
Yeah,
or an attack.
Exactly. You were,
and then you can just resummon it again. So who cares?
Yeah. Maybe it's niche. I think you could say, when you talk about like the fantasies of how many people have that idea before they see that subclass, but like when you read the subclass and get excited about it, you'll be just as excited playing it. Yeah. So I would say it absolutely delivers on the fantasy.
Sells and delivers. Is it bad that when I saw that our Google Doc had the little squiggle and says Jutsu, I thought it was supposed to say Jitsu?
Jutsu, yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be Jitsu, like Jujitsu.
Jitsu. I got you now.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's not bad.
No, okay. What is also not bad is our third nominee. That's the Rune Knight. Oh my gosh, Josh. Raw power. Okay, the base feature of this class at level 3 is the Rune Carver feature, which grows with you, similar to, like, say, battle maneuvers where you get to pick more. You get to select different runes as you level up and apply them to your gear. And every rune seems to have some kind of like utility option baked into it, as well as a really good combat power. Anything from like redirecting targets of enemy attacks to another enemy, to forcing entire rerolls of hits against you, to inflict nasty status effects on your enemies. But the big one really is at level 7, the Hill Giant rune. That gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage for a minute. I know we're avoiding multiclassing because one of the most popular multiclass combinations is the Fighter Barbarian. I mean, that's kind of the signature feature of the entire Barbarian class. And you just get that at level 7 if you choose it. I don't know why you wouldn't if you're going to be tanking up front. But wow, that is really, really strong. And most of the combat things that I talked about, they tend to be reactions, which a lot of times, if you watch our Action Economy series, we have one video dedicated to reactions. If that's not being used often, that's not going to be the case with the Rune Knight. That's just one more thing every round, basically, that you have at your disposal to just wreak havoc on your foes. That's raw power, baby.
I think they come back on a short rest too. I could be remembering that wrong. I'm pretty sure it's short rest. It's fighter. It should be. This is kind of like one of those abilities that you have it, you're going to use your reaction. Eventually you have so many opportunities to use it, and most of them last a minute, whatever thing that it is. Yeah. If it's the status effect, it's just insane. That's all it is. Yeah. I feel like I just said nothing, but I can't even fathom how powerful all of those options are. It also gives you a ton of passives that stack. Like it's
which adds a lot of utility to the fighter kit, which sorely lacks it.
You could potentially have advantage on all of your sleight of hand checks and deception checks and arcana checks and more that I'm forgetting. And that's not even talking about what you were just saying with the raw power, right? It basically makes fighters better outside of combat. And then inside of combat, it makes you deal more damage and have more tools to protect your allies or yourself. There's so many great like tactical options too in there too. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just really, really, really does a great job of enhancing the base features.
There's one that's very similar to like the warding flare feature of the light cleric. Like there's just a lot that's you're gonna protect your allies better. You're gonna deal more damage. All these things, all good things, Josh. All good things. And when you talk about delivering on a fantasy, you turn into a giant. Sort of, you got these runic jugs. I mean, a runic juggernaut that's doing its thing. If you're smaller than large, you become large, and then eventually you become huge. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, I think it really does deliver on the fantasy well, any way you look at it. If what you like about whatever specific type of giant, some of their like abilities and powers, like you're getting that just with the runic ability, that level 3 feature, dealing fire damage or whatever crazy thing
Those
it is.
fire
It gives,
shackles. Oh, they're so cool.
It gives you that, and then like you said, it also makes you larger. It makes you large or it makes you huge. Like absolutely playing out that giant fantasy. Really cool subclass. I feel like I never really paid attention to it too until recently.
Well, you haven't played a fighter, I think, since Marcus, at least in a longer form game, which was I think before this came out of Tasha's. So yeah, I am big boy now. That is how it goes.
And with that, I think that brings us to our honorable mentions before we get into our top 3. And we have a couple honorable mentions. Eldritch Knight.
Yes. Yeah. Another vanilla subclass, you know, an original, the core rules. I think if you're talking about just raw power, I think it does hold up to really modern day D&D. We talked about earlier, or Josh, you mentioned earlier, that utility things are difficult to quantify. And when you start bringing in wizard magic to the fighter, that just kind of opens up an entire world that the fighter normally can't explore without some other kind of enhancement or multi-classing. So just the utility alone, like, I mean, just Veil casting message has been great, or casting minor illusion, mage hand. I mean, there's just a lot of things that even just the cantrips alone can do. But then when I also think about the Eldritch Knight, I think about just the impact and how strong adding multiple uses of the shield spell to a frontline character, it can be massive. I mean, if you really pimp out that AC, you could go plate armor, shield. Yeah, you have an armor class of 20, and then when you need it, your armor class is 25 at level 3. That's massive, and it's only going to scale with you. Plus, just the rest of the kit is good. I don't want to make it sound like it's a one-trick pony, but I wanted to mention the Eldritch Knight here.
And Eldritch Knight, historically, it's not my favorite, but you really can't deny the things that it's good at.
And the other honorable mention is the Psy Warrior. I think the Psy Warrior also is something worth mentioning in terms of raw power. Those were the 5 that I think we were considering when making this video, but they get some similar mechanics in having extra dice like the Battle Master does, and it delivers on the fantasy of that like telekinetic mental warrior really well, and it does have ways to augment damage and do some really cool things. So I wanted to mention the Psy Warrior as well. Josh, I believe the time has come to reveal in order. Josh, what do we got?
Yeah, number 3 is the Echo Knight. I love the Echo Knight. I've only been able to play it in kind of short doses, but it really is something that just gets me so excited about playing it. It's a really fun idea. It's creative. Haven't seen much like it. It's just good at what it does. But when it comes down to the raw power and a lot of what we had already talked about, I think the other 2 just stand a little above. So
I have to agree. And speaking of 2, that would be for us the Battle Master. I know people in our Discord server will probably be a little surprised because we were like, I think I might put it at number 1. But as we just broke things down, the Battle Master, which we also did put as best delivery on a fantasy, we just believe it does take not only the fantasy of the tactical warrior and give that to you, it kind of sells you the subclass fantasy and the base class fantasy, just in my opinion, better than anything else that we've seen. But the reason why, so obviously we have Rune Knight at number 1, but the reason why Battle Master was number 2, I think, was because it's difficult to quantify behavioral effects like having precision and attack. I know I'm going to be dealing more damage, but I don't know exactly how often that might occur. And I know that's kind of baked into anytime you're rolling dice, but it's not like there's a modifier there. So it's one of those things that situational things where pushing attack is going to kill an enemy completely because you knock them off a cliff. Tripping, I mean, how great is that if you have a rogue in your party? There's just so many other things to consider. But ultimately, we tend to favor reactions and action economy. And that's really where the Rune Knight, plus basically doubling your HP pool at level 7. That's kind of great. It's just, this one, Rune Knight is incredible.
I think I mentioned power creep earlier. I didn't call it that. I called it something else. But you know,
Power drip.
power drip. I don't
If you
think I
didn't
said
say
drip.
that, that just.
Um, but you really see the power creep in a subclass like the Rune Knight. There's just static passives that stack, and the passives aren't just like you're a little better at this. It's you have advantage on this. And I've probably complained about the advantage mechanic before. 5e is kind of like an all or nothing when it's with the d20. It's like all is you have advantage, nothing would be you have disadvantage. And that's like the highest award that you could be given. So to have advantage on so many different things, like 4 skills off the top of my head, you could have advantage on just from these passives.
Slap a rune here. Boom. Now I'm really good at talking.
It's wild, and the combat features in addition to that are just ridiculously strong. It also really hits on that fantasy too, so it's hard to argue against the Rune Knight.
But if you like arguing, that's what the comment section is for. So if you disagree with us, we do want to hear about it. If you would put them in a different order, you do different choices, please just tell us why, because when we talk about best, that is a subjective term, and this is what we came up with. So we're going to have some more options for this series on screen now, and we'd encourage you to watch those. And then also, like we said before, check out the link tree in the description, hop in the Discord server, and then we can talk about, say, the monk, which should be next whenever we get around to it. So thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Jake's hair, everyone.